Jennifer is the director of the Charles Maurer Herbarium and assistant professor of botany at CSU. There she teaches plant identification, plant systematics, and co-teaches dendrology. She also coordinates the growth and improvement of the herbarium collections, directs biodiversity research efforts, and manages herbarium staff, students, and volunteers working with the collections. Throughout her career, Jennifer has traveled extensively throughout Colorado, documenting its rich floristic diversity. This knowledge led her to write The Flora of Colorado, with the goal of helping anyone identify the plants of Colorado with ease and confidence.
Hi, it's good to see you all. So, yes, hi, I'm Jennifer, and today I'm going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to talk about the Flora of Colorado. A second printing of the second edition just came out, so I'm going to give you some updates. And then I also want to talk about the Colorado Natural Heritage Program statewide Natural Heritage Survey. If you tuned in for a talk from me last year, you might notice that I am now at Colorado State University. So I was at Denver Botanic Gardens, and I've come back to CSU. There we go. Okay, so I always describe my job as the worst job in the world. I have to travel around the state to the most beautiful places and document the plants, and it's awful. No. It's fantastic.
It looks terrible.
It is terrible. It's terrible. I don't recommend it. The Flora of Colorado, the second edition of, or the second printing of the second edition, just hit the shelves. Okay. So I kind of wanted to give a little brief overview here because a lot of people ask me, how do you write a flora, Jennifer? How do you take all of that knowledge and put it down into a book? So, the backbone of every flora are herbarium specimens. So this is a herbarium specimen here, and I just like to call them little moments in time. It's a little snapshot of what was at a particular place at that particular moment in time, and now it's preserved here on this herbarium specimen. And the label down there tells us the date that it was collected and where it was collected, putting it at a specific place and at that specific moment in time. And so really, without herbarium specimens, there would be no flora. We need that information. So shout out to Natural History Collections. Asked you to start your video. Uh-oh. Maggie, is the screen not being shared? Hold on 1 second.
Oh, now we can see you. That's lovely. Thank you, Jennifer.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. All right. So, in order to really tell you how I have written a flora, I have to tell you a little bit about the history of the flora of Colorado. How did we get to where we are now? Because I wasn't the first one to ever write a flora of Colorado. There have been several in the past. And actually the very first one was written in 1906 by Per Axel Rydberg. So this was a really foundational work because it took all of these checklists of the plants that were known from the area and put them into dichotomous keys. So this is essential because now people can use those dichotomous keys to figure out what am I actually looking at. Prior to this, it was just a checklist of plants, really unuseful. So here's the flora of Colorado, and in 1906, Rydberg lists 2,872 taxa. So this includes varieties and subspecies as well. That's actually quite a bit for 1906. So let's see how that continues throughout our journey here. This is one of Rydberg's specimens here. But what I want to point out is look at where the Flora of Colorado was published. It was actually published in Fort Collins. I know, Maggie. Yeah, by the experiment station. Isn't that cool? by the Colorado Agricultural College, which is now CSU. 1906, we have 2,872 taxa, right, for the flora of Colorado, published in Fort Collins at the Colorado Agricultural College Experiment Station. Why was it published here, but written by someone at the New York Botanical Garden? Because I know that's what you were wondering. Let's find out. Okay, it's because the first two curators of the herbarium here at Colorado State University, Jacob Hover Cohen and Charles Spencer Crandall, actually were here to write the flora. So the Colorado Agricultural College had a contract to write the flora of Colorado, and Crandall had moved to Michigan. Cohen here had actually come back to Colorado to become the curator. He was Crandall's assistant before that, and one of the very first graduates of Colorado Agricultural College, pretty cool, but he died very suddenly of appendicitis. So they boxed up all of the specimens in the herbarium and sent them to the New York Botanical Garden, and Rydberg wrote the flora based on the specimens that are at the herbarium. Pretty cool. I mean, not cool, but yeah. Okay, so some time passed. And then in 1954, Harold Harrington, who was also a curator at the CSU Herbarium, he wrote a manual of the plants of Colorado. So by this time, we have cars, right? We're able to travel to more places to get more plants. We don't have to take a horse and a cart anymore to get up to Horsetooth. So there's a lot more exploration, a lot more plants added to, a lot more species added to our flora. And Harrington was actually the curator of the herbarium here for about 40 years. So he was wonderful and taught a lot of classes here. And this is actually the backbone of the Manual of the Plants of Colorado. So you have to put yourself in 1954, right? So we have a lot of advances, but we also still don't have word processing. So what Harrington did is have these cards for every single species, and he would write the description and he would write where it was published. This is Podostera eastwoodii, and then he'd make some notes on it, and then his wife would use these cards and she would, on a typewriter, type all of this up for him later. And so there are boxes that are the flora of Colorado, or the Manual of the Plants of Colorado. And then on the flip side, he had maps. And he would go around to all of the different herbaria and actually map out where those species occurred, along with some kind of little elevation range guidelines. And I'm going to make this a little right? Isn't that cool? I mean, what Harrington did over the course of 20 years, we can now do in 20 seconds. Yeah. Yeah. 20 seconds. Yes. Well, there we go. So Harrington unfortunately doesn't have a species count in the Manual of the Plants, so I don't know how many are in there. What he does say is that 1 out of every 30 species was a new record for the state. So whatever that means. Yeah. All right. Move forward in time. So the manual is actually still highly regarded as an excellent resource for the flora of Colorado. It had detailed descriptions of all the species. And then came William Weber. And he was foundational because he wrote these, he took that Manual of the Plants and he kind of condensed it down into a usable field guide. So something that people could take out into the field with them, not this big heavy Manual of the Plants, which is hard to take in your backpack. It's about this thick, the Manual of the Plants, and it's hardcover. You don't want to backpack with that. And it was divided into the east and west slope to further help you identify plants. So The problem is with species counts, the division of the east and west slopes, I can't get an accurate number. So, so on the east slope, by this time, there are 2,260 species, and on the west slope, about 2,100 species. So in the last editions of the, Weber's books, he really did not want to adopt any of the new taxonomy. And he very clearly states, I do not want to, I'm not doing this. Molecular data is changing everything that we know about, plants, and I'm only going to stick with this more morphological delineation here, and I'm not using any of the new research that has come out. And we all know taxonomic stability is ignorance, right? Names change. The name that I learned things as is not the name that it is now, and so on and so forth, and forever and always. But to really just go, nope, not doing it is kind of a disservice to the evidence that's out there now, which really says otherwise. So that brings me to the Flora of Colorado, the second printing of the second edition, which just came out here last year, 2024. Okay, so while herbarium specimens are the backbone of the flora, they tell us what species are in the state, right? And they provide that foundational record to go back to so that we have, proof. We have this verified record. This thing is here. Now I can put it in the flora. We also have to have a backbone of taxonomy. And taxonomy does change, and it is frustrating. I do understand that. But the flora really follows the most up-to-date taxonomy. So I use the Plants of the World Online, HOLO. I use the Flora of North America, but that is also outdated almost as soon as it's published. So for family delimitations, I primarily use the Angiosperm Phylogeny website, and I try to stay as up to date as possible, right? But I will tell you that every new classification schema that comes out, I evaluate every single one of those to make sure that it actually aligns with my concept of a species. So you have to have this idea of, well, I'm going to call this a species and maybe not this, before you even get started. And that way you can be not doing all of this in a very subjective manner, right? You're actually taking the evidence that's provided and you're using it effectively. And I will tell you that all of the documentation of biodiversity and the ultimate conservation that comes with that documentation relies on accurate taxonomic classification. So we have to keep understanding what is out there, and we have to keep applying, all of these techniques to understand biodiversity. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. And that is that every species name is really just a hypothesis, right? That species doesn't know that it's called Helianthus annuus and that Linnaeus named it. Does it? No, it exists in the world. So what are species names? They are human constructs that we have taken and applied to our natural world because we need that in order to pass along information, in order to be able to categorize what's out there, in order to be able to say, hey, don't eat that, that's poisonous. Don't. That's not the thing that you want to eat. You want to eat this thing, right? We have to have a name assigned to that to be able to pass that information along. And so these species names, I just really want to stress that they don't know what they are. This is something that we have applied to our natural world to make sense of it. And so some people might say species are not real, right? But to that, I would say, but they matter, and we have to have them. Okay. So when you think about a species name as being a hypothesis, and the authority being the person that proposed that hypothesis, it puts the whole thing in a different perspective, because now we can just offer a new hypothesis when we get new lines of evidence. So if we get new genetic evidence that says, hey, this thing is actually genetically distinct from this other thing, or hey, this thing actually doesn't form what we call a monophyletic or natural group. It is unnatural, meaning not derived from shared common ancestry, right? Well, now we've got evidence to say, well, we need to do some taxonomic reclassification here. We can look at morphological evidence, of course. You know, in my concept of a species still has to have like a morphologically distinct form. Okay, we've got to put it in a key somehow, right? I have to be able to write a couplet for it. You have to be able to distinguish it from the other things. And then sometimes we use geographic evidence as well. That when, you know, species can overlap in range, it's not entirely set in stone there. Species don't have their own distinct ranges, right? But oftentimes species will have very specific substrate specificity. We can use that information. Do these things overlap in range that are closely related? So we use all of these lines of evidence to really help inform our hypotheses about what a species is. Okay. So just to give you a little example here. So this was some work that I did a long time, it feels like a long time ago now, working on the thistles, where I actually was able to show those pink highlighted lineages there. This is called a phylogeny, and it's just a representation, a visual representation of the genetic differences, basically, between these things. So what this is saying is that these are genetically distinct, okay? And when we look at them, they're actually morphologically distinct as well. And it turns out that they don't overlap in range either. So despite being very similar looking and having gone by Cirsium scopularum, which is what these were all called, it turned out that there was actually just a new species, undescribed, hiding in plain sight. So I named that Cirsium funky for my mentor, Dr. Vicky Funk. And so if you've heard of the funky thistle, it's really technically funk's thistle, but gosh darn it, it is so funky, isn't it? Oh, it's so funky. It's just a gorgeous, oh, what a view. It's like a spiny thing. Wow. Oh.
Where was that picture taken?
Oh, down in the Sangre de Cristos.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm working right now with a collaborator, Mitt McLaughlin at the University of Northern Colorado, and we're describing a new species of Fusarium that was also hiding in plain sight for a while, that we also have determined to be genetically distinct, morphologically distinct, and also doesn't overlap in range with its similar Fusaria vigilifera. So we're still naming that one, stay tuned. Not in the flora yet. All right, so the second printing of the second edition, that's hard to say, I don't know why I keep stumbling over that, really has some updates, but a lot of it has remained the same from the second edition. So the second edition, I updated the plant zone descriptions, and I really added a lot of nice color pictures to go along with that so that you could have a nice visual. What does the alpine look like? What do all the different things in the alpine look like a scree slope, a meadow, a willow meadow. This was the biggest change from the first edition to the second edition, and that was the distribution maps. So instead of having these county distribution maps, I was able to add dot distribution maps. Now, these are not without some controversy, right? How can you verify every single dot in that map, Jennifer? I'm going to tell you that I can't. And it's okay. What I did was I went through all of the maps and looked for outliers, and then I verified specimens online visually, looking at those outliers. So yeah, it was a lot of work. These dot maps were, wow, that was, I really, that was a lot. That was a lot. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. And in the future, what I'd like to do for the 3rd edition is incorporate iNaturalist observations as well. There are really nice, like black and white photos of things like the fruiting bracts of atriplex, the seeds of chenopodium, all of these things that are really hard to like write out a description for, but easy to see in a photo. And then when you have them all side by side, easy to compare against each other as you're going through the key. And then the 1st edition had some colored photographs, but in the 2nd edition, I actually added about 30% more colored photos. And so we took Castanea from only having 5 to a whole plate of almost all Castanea, minus the one apple one. This is almost all Cercium. I had to do that. I couldn't not do that. That's my genus. That's my babies. Yeah. So Carex perogynia. Who doesn't love looking at Carex perogynia, right? And grass florets along with the spikelets. So this was a big addition to the Carex key to actually have the spikelets next to, or the inflorescence next to the perogynia there. So you really get like the overall look and then the very detailed look. And this is what you need when you're keying out a sedge, right? And then a lot of people were able to contribute photos of things that I haven't gotten or just things that I didn't have a great photo of. Lorraine Yates contributed a lot of astragalus photos. She's amazing. Got a bunch of photos from iNaturalist, from Cecilia Alexander, and then friends like Tom Zeiner contributed some. So it was just really nice to be able to fill in some of those gaps. Okay. So what it comes down to is the Big 10. Okay, these are our top 10 families, most speciose families here in Colorado. And as you can probably guess, the Aster family is our top winning family here in Colorado, with about 1 in every 8 species belonging to this family. So that's pretty good. If you know one family, if you can recognize one family here in Colorado, make it the Aster family, and you've already got a lot of the work done. And I will say that for these Big 10, the top 10 families here, if you can recognize visually these top 10 families, you've got about 2/3 of the flora in your back pocket. So keep that in mind. All right. So most of our flora is native, which is great, right? About 85%. We have about 4% of the flora that is endemic, 15% that is considered rare, about 3% of that is considered rare and endemic, and about 15% introduced. Would anyone like to guess what county in Colorado has the most introduced species? It's not Larimer. We didn't win. Yeah. Well, not Weld.
No. I would think more like Denver.
It's Boulder. It's Boulder. It's Boulder County. Yeah. So, do you remember our first, way back when, in 1906, right? We have now added almost 500 taxa to the flora since 1906. So we now have 3,361 taxa, including varieties and subspecies. And if you take those out, about 3,200 species for the state of Colorado. So that is a significant increase from 1906. Go West. Woohoo! Oh, I did have that. All right. So including the second printing, we're gonna play a little game here. All right. How many new species have been added
Gemma, for the second
for the
printing.
second printing? Yeah, all of them together.
5, 10?
126.
No,
Isn't that amazing?
no.
A lot of that is range extensions. Maybe there was like one record of that species in the state from a herbarium specimen, and it was in a herbarium and no one knew about it until all of the herbarium data became available online. We did have some taxonomic revisions, things got broken up, new introduced species, of course, things coming into the state that were not here before, and then even species that are new to science, so newly described species. Pretty cool. So species that are new to the second printing include Portulaca pilosa. I took that picture. This just comes into the state down in the southeastern Colorado. Viola has undergone an extensive taxonomic revision. So you'll notice a lot of new violet species in the flora. I'm sorry, I didn't do it. This is one that's out on the plains, Viola retusa. And then this one, Burkeliastrum findleri, is a new record of a species. Again, it's just in the southern part of the state, down by Raton Pass. So just barely creeping into Colorado. So a lot of range extensions. But how many in the second printing of the second edition are just new to science? Newly described species. Any guesses? 5, 50, 1. And in fact, this is one that I would like to point out to everyone, including everyone online, to look for if you're down by Uray, because this is only known from the type specimen. So it was described from the type specimen, Erythranthine natoides, and Neeson went down and couldn't find anything that looked like this. So here you go. Here is your next adventure to go actually find Erythranthine natoides. Okay. All right. Now, because taxonomy doesn't stop, it keeps growing, right? It keeps building. We're always adding new species. We're always finding new things, and that's what makes it really exciting when we go out and we do field work. All right. So, how many new taxa do you think are already ready to be added to the third edition that I couldn't just fit into the second printing? 66 species.
Jeez.
I know, it never stops. Again, taxonomic updates, a lot of things being split out, range
Climate
extensions,
change.
introduced species. Yeah, things moving up. Yeah, yeah. And species new to science. So all of those things all combined together to be added. So yeah, my work never ends. So the other thing I really want to point out too is that when you open that flora, when you use that flora of Colorado, it too is a snapshot in time, right? It also is only what could be printed at that moment in time. I can't go back and take everything and redo it in real time. So, all right. I mean, maybe someday there will be an app, and that would be wonderful. And then I could update things in real time. But anyway, I want to introduce you to a really amazing project that is currently being carried out by the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, and that's the Colorado Statewide Natural Heritage Survey. So CNHP received a grant of $8 million to conduct a statewide natural heritage survey all across the state. Let's document all of the biodiversity. That's easy, right? Yeah. Okay, so the main goals for the statewide natural heritage survey are really, well, there's actually quite a few goals. One, we want to know what's out there, right? We want to be able to really document biodiversity so that we can have proactive planning for conservation. And we want to know what species out there are at risk for extinction, what species are rare, and what can we do to best conserve them? Well, we can't do that if we don't know where they are and what state they're currently in. We also want to identify critical wetlands. Okay, there are actually quite a few wetlands here in Colorado, and those are really important. They help protect communities from fire and drought. And all of this goes to support recreation planning. Again, once you know what is there, then you can best use that information to build trails and support recreation activities. And we can't do any of that if we don't know the biodiversity that's out there. And then also, and I think this is like a really cool component of the statewide natural heritage survey objective, is to bring equity to communities. So really focus not just on areas, you know, that already have a lot of resources to help them understand what biodiversity is present there, but to go to areas that don't have those resources too, to really level up the game. Empower all communities. So this is a map that shows where biodiversity is most at risk in America, and you'll actually see quite a bit of red here in Colorado. So there's a lot of threat here. And so it is important for us to get out there, especially now with climate change and with all the things, and understand where things are at. Where are the rare species? How are ecosystems doing? And so the biodiversity survey is really aligned with that, to understand how can we best help species in these threatened areas. Okay, so what's going to come out of this? Well, a lot of data. Okay, a lot of, I'm going to guess, a lot of new records, a lot of new county records, a lot of updated distributional data, and all of those layers are going to be incorporated into the Colorado's Conservation Data Explorer, or CoNPS, which is available online through the CNHP website for people to use. They're also going to create a story map and interactive website so people can explore the biodiversity of Colorado from their own homes. And then there will be a statewide natural heritage survey summit in 2029, so stay tuned. So you might be thinking, Jennifer, we have been collecting specimens in Colorado since like the 1800s. What's left? What's left to document? Okay, this is a heat map of all of the specimens that were collected in the state of Colorado. Do you notice some trends? Yeah, they seem to be centered around the four major herbaria. We've got up north, Colorado State, we have Boulder, we have Rumble at in Gunnison there, the Rocky Mountain Biological Research Laboratory. And then down here, we've got the Fort Lewis College in the San Juans. And so even though we do have a lot of specimen data from Colorado, it's not equitably distributed across the state. And look at where it is least on the Eastern Plains. Right? We have a lot of documentation out there. And I will say that some of that is because it has been converted to agriculture, and so is not even like, I don't want to say worth going there for a biodiversity survey, but you're not going to find like the native habitat, right? So some of that is because of that. There's a lot of private land on the Eastern Plains, so it does make accessibility difficult. And people don't come to Colorado to go botanize the Eastern Plains. It's unfortunate because it is really beautiful. And then also like the northwestern corner of the state. And especially the mountains down here, right, in the Sangre de Cristos, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people go to the mountains. You can see it, right? But not down in the Sangre de Cristos. So anyway, there's still a lot to be explored. And as you've seen, we're always adding new species to the flora. So, all right. Okay. So every year, the Natural Heritage Program establishes counties that they're going to focus on for their statewide survey. And these are the counties for 2025. Okay, just to give you a little idea here. And so what I'm going to do now is take you on a little brief journey through some of those areas, because what I want to do is inspire you to go out and also observe biodiversity, and I will show you how at the end of the presentation. So this is a little map here of Colorado showing our major zones here, where we've got the plains, the foothills, desert shrublands, our montane, and then our alpine zones high in the mountains. And the way that I like to describe this is imagining that you're driving along I-70. Okay, so everyone knows I-70, right? So we're going to start in Burlington. All right, here we go. That's not Burlington, but, but that's the Eastern Plains. Okay, now we're on the shortgrass steppe. This was a particularly amazing year on the shortgrass steppe, I will tell you. It's usually not that green, but it was beautiful that year. But there's a lot of diversity. You can already see, like, oh, there's diversity out there. There's topography, right? We have some plateaus, some hills, and there's a lot actually happening on the plains. We have shortgrass prairie, we have tall grass prairie. This is big bluestem here. We have sandy canyons. We have buttes. And in really good years, it turns into a little bit of a super bloom in places. Isn't that amazing? Oh. But we also have in the southeastern part of the state an amazing system of canyons, rivers, a lot of places for plants to grow that are unique. All right, so we're back in our car. We've driven past Burlington, okay? All right, we're coming into Denver. We're like, I want to get through Denver. I don't want to drive through Denver. Okay, we're driving through Denver. We're getting out of Denver. We're like, yay, getting out of Denver. You're now in the foothill zone, right? We're starting to go up in elevation. Okay, there we are. Thunderous pine, oak shrublands, little pinyon juniper, little shout out here to Fort Collins. What I want you to notice from the foothills shots is how they're always on a bit of an upslope here. Just some shrublands here, pinyon juniper. All right, back in our car. We're now traveling into the montane zone. Right, we're now close to Georgetown. Okay, right, we're getting up there in elevation. We're now at about 8,000 feet. We're running into aspen groves. We're running into Douglas fir, spruce, fields of columbines. Oh, beautiful meadows of flowers as far as the eye can see. Oh gosh, there's more crested view for you. Oh, more crested view. Gosh. Now you all enjoying me in crested view, don't you? Yeah. Aspen groves, and forest, lodgepole pine, spruce, fir. This is actually a fen. So this is a rich iron fin in the middle of one of those montane forests. All right, now we have to take a little diversion because if we stay on I-70 and we go through the tunnel, we're gonna miss the Alpine. And we can't have that because the Alpine is like the coolest. So we're gonna we're gonna go over Loveland Pass instead, all right? So here we are. We're gonna get out of our car. We're now in the treeless zone. There are no trees here, just perennial herbs for the most part. We're at 11,000 feet and higher. All right, we're now in the Alpine. Oh, gorgeous. So many beautiful things. Oh, more gorgeous plants. And I like to point this out. Some of the Alpine is easy to get to. Like this, that's easy. And some is not. This is definitely not an easy hike. This is on the backside of one's cheek. And then some of the Alpine is actually just downright dangerous. This is the trail. It's the trail, just barely cut into the side of the mountain there. Yeah, yeah. This, by the way, when you walked on it, sounded like you were walking on glass. Yeah, yeah. But lots of really cool plants. So that's what keeps you going, right? Okay, so what I think is really cool though about the Alpine is that 25% of our endemic species are actually in the Alpine zone. And that's just because we have a variety of geology, we have a history of glaciation, so a lot of environmental, historical, climatic factors went into this 25% endemic species. Kind of a fun little fact. All right, so we're back in our car and we've gone down, we're driving down the west slope now. Okay, we've crossed what's known as the Continental Divide. Okay, we're now on the west side. It's a little drier. We've got our semi-desert shrublands and sagebrush shrublands here. This is one of my favorite places to go in the spring. These Mancos clay hillsides outside of like Delta and Montrose. They look like barren clay hillsides, but sometimes in the spring they liven up and turn green. And wow, there's some really cool plants on those. Down in the southwestern part of the state, more desert. The northwestern part of the state, northwestern part. Oh wait, that was the middle. That previous one was Colorado National Monument. I got ahead of myself. Yeah. All right. Now we're in the northwestern part of the state, and more sagebrush. All right. The sagebrush shrublands, we have three main parts, right? We've got North Park, Middle Park, South Park. This is North Park here, lots of sagebrush, but also streams, wetlands. And then the last part is a really special type of habitat that we have here in Colorado and in Arizona, Utah, and these are called hanging gardens. So these are alcoves that you see there in the distance. You see that alcove, and it has a perennial seep of water that comes down into it. And you can imagine that in the desert, a perennial source of water is a pretty awesome thing to have. And these are really special habitats that support some really rare plants. And they also support a lot of poison ivy. So if you do go there, you should be careful. There's a hanging garden columbine, and then this is all poison ivy. Yeah. So the last thing that I really want to share with you all is how to get involved with the statewide heritage survey, and that is through iNaturalist. So the Natural Heritage Program is actively going through iNaturalist observations to help understand that biodiversity and to help fill in gaps. So how do you help? All right, it's really easy. If you have a smartphone device, you just need to get the iNaturalist app. Does anyone have that app already? Yeah, awesome, right? Yeah, I love it. I am quite addicted to it. It is a lot of fun. Once you start using it, you cannot stop. But what I want to point out too is that if you have the iNaturalist app, it is not just for plants. Okay, you can actually take observations of any living organism. So these are just some of my many iNaturalist observations. I've got vultures, a weird insect where I was like, I don't know what that is. I wonder if iNaturalist does. It's cool. It's a blister beetle. I didn't know that. Makes you blister. Yeah. Anyway, you don't. The only thing, I guess, there is one living organism. That's not. This isn't exactly true. There is one living organism that you cannot take photos of and put. Yes.
What?
People.
People.
People on that.
You can't do
Don't work.
people. No.
No,
No.
facial recognition, that
No.
was one.
No people. No people go on iNaturalist. Sorry. Every other living organism, though, yes. So it's really easy. You just take your smartphone device, you take a photo, and then you upload it. So you open up the app. I like to actually take photos and then upload them later, because that way I'm not using up my battery, and then that way I'm not like worried about the geolocation messing up or anything like that. So I like to take the photos and then upload them. So I've taken a photo, and then all I have to do is go into the app, click on this green circle with a plus sign in it, upload my photo, and then iNaturalist is like, oh, do you think this is a pedicularis? Do you think it's pedicularis growing Landica? And I go, yeah. And I check that box there, and voila. And I will tell you, okay, I took these screenshots a couple of years ago about how to use iNaturalist. It has gotten so much better at IDs. Back then, it thought this was for sure pedicularis, and it thought it had a high likelihood of being growing Landica. Okay? Today, there's no way it would go, oh, no, that is pedicularis growing Landica, that is elephant's head. It would never doubt. So you might also be wondering, well, doesn't that put you out of a job, Jennifer? Why would I use the poor Colorado? Well, because sometimes it is also wrong. And yeah, and sometimes you also need parts of the plant that you can't see with a photo to be able to identify it. Maybe tiny little hairs, maybe you need seeds, maybe you need those paragenia for the carex, and maybe you just don't have those in your photos. So I will say that I do use iNaturalist a lot. Its identifications have gotten scarily good in some ways, because it does use like kind of facial recognition technology, and it also cross-correlates that with what's been observed nearby that looks similar to the thing that you saw. So it's pretty good. But if you really want to like verify what you have, you've got to go back to that dichotomous key, because there is everything, all of the species that you could possibly be looking at. So oftentimes, if I'm someplace new, right, especially, I'll use iNaturalist to kind of narrow it down, and then I'll go to a dichotomous key and verify it for certain. Anyway, you can make mistakes. All right. So one thing I get asked a lot about is, well, what if I observed this, a yellow lady slipper, and I do not want to put my location on iNaturalist so that people can just walk up and pick that flower, right? Well, you can obscure your location, and it will actually obscure it to such a degree that you can't just walk right up to it. You can obscure it in a couple of different ways. But I will say, here, well, I'll show you how to do it first, and then I'll give my 2 cents. Okay, so when you put in your observation here, right? You scroll down, there is a location visibility option for you. And right now it's open, meaning that I've shared my location information so that that is an accurate pinpoint of where I saw bighorn sheep, okay? Now, if I was like, oh, I don't want people to go see the bighorn sheep, I don't know why I would think that. But you can click on this and you can turn this to obscured, okay? And then it will create a radius around your point of about a mile. And so it obscures exactly where it was. Now, if you're like, I really don't want any of that information out there, you can turn it to private, which basically means it's meaningless data though, because now you've got no information about where it was observed, okay? So you have to kind of keep all of this in mind when you're using iNaturalist. And what I would say is that, you know, there will always be bad apples in any group, right? We know this, we've observed this, we all know examples of this. So when you are turning your location visibility to private, you're basically just uploading pictures at that point, okay? Nobody can really use that data to help understand diversity or climate change or anything. If you turn it to obscured, there is a likelihood that people could still use that data, and people might even contact you and say, hey, I want to use this in this research paper. I need really like detailed coordinates, and you could give it to them, okay? So I would probably just really never use private is what I'm trying to say. And most of the time I just keep mine open. I've only ever turned it on obscure if I was on private land and the landowner had an agreement that they did not want pinpoint locations. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about some cool iNav finds. Okay, so this is one I took this last fall. This is an example of a range extension that is now on iNaturalist. So the nice thing about iNaturalist is I don't need to carry my plant press. You know, all I have to have is my phone. And so I can record observations of all of these species without having to make a physical specimen. It really enables anyone to go out and observe biodiversity. It makes it easy. Now, I will say that a physical specimen is necessary for a lot of different reasons, and we should still have them. We shouldn't just go straight to making iNaturalist observations of things instead of herbarium collections, right? Because we still need to be able to look at a physical specimen for morphology. We need to be able to extract DNA. There's a lot of reasons that we need that physical specimen. But when you don't have a plant press or when you don't have a permit and you're in an area, you can take a photo. It's very easy. So this was a range extension of Dryopteris felix moss. It's a fern here. When I'm out somewhere, this was just like a sea of sagebrush outside of Gunnison. I saw these cool rocks and I was like, ooh, rocks. Yeah, because plants follow the rocks. Right, the cool ones do anyways. So I went to the rocks and I looked in all the rocky crevices and I was certain there was something cool in there, and there was. It was Dryopteris felix moss. And so I took a photo and then I uploaded it, and what I realized is that now it filled in this giant gap. So before it was like down here and up north, and there was nothing in the middle. Oh, that's cool. We filled that in. It is there. It was just undocumented. We can use iNaturalist observations to really like track introduced or invasive species in almost real time. So this is a new introduced species into the state called Philago arvensis, field fluffweed, It's come into all of these burn areas. This is the East Troublesome Creek fire in the background here. And those are the iNaturalist observations of it. So you can see it is tracking its way down the Front Range and it's following the fires. It's actually just moving through the places of fire. So, we can use iNaturalist to document rare species. So if you're in an area and you're like, even if I have a permit, right? Maybe I don't want to take a collection. Maybe there aren't that many plants. Maybe it's not worth making a collection of that thing. I can always make an iNaturalist observation. And the nice thing about these is that it helps us update like photos of rare species. I know I saw Bob on this call. This is one of his photos. And then this was a really fun find. This is Penstemon bleakley-eyed, Bleakley's penstemon. I took this photo back in like 2018, uploaded it to iNaturalist, left it at Penstemon because I didn't know what to call it. It didn't really look like Harborii, but it didn't really look like anything else either. So I just kind of left it as Penstemon. And then later, Lizard Boy came along and said, oh, actually, this is a new species that I just described, and I thought it would be here. So this was actually the very first observation of Penstemon bleakley-eyed in Colorado. And it also is why you should, if you're a taxonomist, trust your gut, because that Phaseria that I showed you earlier that we're naming as a new species, I actually took many photos of in between 2016 and 2018. I don't know why, I was just in the area and I never knew what to call it. So whenever, the lesson here is that if I don't know what to call something, maybe look at it a little harder. Maybe it's new. And then this is that Berkeleyastra that I showed you earlier. So this is a new species that's now in the second printing of the second edition. And it came from an iNaturalist observation. And actually quite a few of the new additions to the flora came from iNaturalist observations. Because the best thing about iNaturalist is that it empowers anyone to go out and observe biodiversity. You don't have to be a specialist, right? With a permit, you can just take pictures and upload them. So I readily get tagged on iNaturalist or sent messages. I think the other nice thing about it is that it actually is a really wonderful community. It's a really great place for experts to go. It's a really great place for people that want to learn the flora to go. It's a really great place for people that want to go out and hunt some of the rare things to go. It's just a great community. So, and there are a lot of experts that use iNaturalist. So, CNHP is actually hosting an iNaturalist training as part of the statewide Natural Heritage Survey, and it will be coming up on March 27th. So if you scan that QR code there, that'll take you to a link. You can attend in person or online. And the idea here is that, we are going to empower you to go out and take photos, take observations, help the Natural Heritage Program, complete that statewide Natural Heritage Survey to the best ability possible. Cool. That means you can participate too. And with that, I just want to thank you all for coming here today. Whether you're in person or online, I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you don't have iNaturalist, go out and get it now. All right, thank you. I'll open it up for questions.
All right. I totally lost track of time with all this.
Until 7:30.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's perfect.
There's any online questions.
Perfect. So 20 minutes. Okay. Oh, thanks. Thank you for coming.
7 new messages. I hope they aren't all questions.
No, at least a dozen of them are thank yous. I'm really not encountering a lot of questions. I'm scrolling back up.
Should we let INAT apply taxonomy changes automatically? Yes. If iNaturalist does a taxonomy swap, it's for a reason. So you should let them go ahead and change that. Now, if someone has come along and just said, oh, I think this is something else other than the thing that you verified it as, you can always ask them why. Like, oh, well, why do you think that? Because I really thought it was this other thing. And then it opens up a really great discussion opportunity for learning and engagement. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask people on iNaturalist. Usually experts are always want to talk about their study organism. I mean, yeah.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yes.
By chance, is there an Excel spreadsheet of the flora?
Oh,
Annie McMahon asks.
there is, but maybe have Annette reach out to me individually about that. It's just not like in well, it depends on what you want to use it for. Yeah. But yes, I do have a spreadsheet.
So can we share your email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can. Yeah. They changed Pinus ponderosa. Carrie, no. What? No. I will say that sometimes on iNaturalist, they might be a little premature. Have you noticed the campanula rotundifolia? No. It's now like campanula rotundifolia complex because they want to pull out the North American or maybe just Colorado as Campanula petiolaris. But then I emailed or I messaged the people that were doing the taxonomic change, and I was like, hey, can you point me towards a reference? Because I always check the actual work. Like, does this align with my species concept, right? And I want to evaluate it because you can be a bad taxonomist and put out new names too. That's also a thing. So I want to make sure. And they had no reference because it was just like basically hearsay. So Carrie, I'm sorry. I'd have to look into the Pinus ponderosa one. That's yeah, I didn't know about that. Hazel says the woody plants. I do know that Jack Carter's book was updated. And so I do believe there's a guide to the trees and shrubs of Colorado that is updated, but not a winter guide. I think an updated winter guide would be awesome. Maybe I can have a student work on that for an independent study project. Oh, for native plant, yes. Annette, just reach out to me. I'll get that to you. Yeah. Was the Montane ecoregion Columbine taken on Forest Service land? Oh, yeah, that was by Cataract Lake. I think that's Forest Service, Lower Cataract Lakes in Summit County.
Hey, Jen, I have a question.
Oh, yes.
We've fielded 3 unique requests in the last couple of months about how to update taxonomy with apps, right? So like the high country apps people talk to us. We talked about this Colorado plants database that I put in the chat. You know, what are your thoughts on how we can keep track of this taxonomy and all of the useful tools we develop?
I mean, I would say that some sort of like relational table would probably be your best bet, like a SQL database where you have links to synonyms so that basically whatever name someone is trying to search for it as, it would also find like the synonyms as well. I don't know how you would do that because I don't write apps, but I do know databases. Yeah. I think that taxonomy is always the crux of any conversation about the flora of Colorado. And it's always changing because we're always doing more systematic work. And I think that's important to point out too, that it is, you know, that snapshot in time too. Yeah, so I'm sorry, Maggie, I don't have a great suggestion for you. And I saw something about hybrid populations, hybrids, syngamians. So hybrids, syngamians are hybrids, are a little tricky and don't really follow a typical species concept. Plants are notorious for not adhering to one concept over the other. And sometimes species can cross and create hybrids. There really isn't a great way, Rick, to indicate that in the flora. Sometimes you'll see like an X in front of a specific epithet, and that indicates that that species is basically a hybrid. So, but other times things of hybrid origin are elevated to species level as well. It all depends.